man is very, very difficult to get a hold of because he's extremely busy. Them pull him from pillar to post. Sometimes I call him and I get him and him a travel. And him take the time to talk to me still, And he's so respectful that him say, him no rush me off of the phone. Him explain to me and say, watch here. Me I do this, me I do that, me I do that. I will touch base with you whenever I can. And because a lot of you in the chat, you know of this man. And so they said, you have to get him on the program, man. You can't give up. I said, me not give up, but the man busy. And then guess what happened? A few weeks ago, Dr. Knife came on the program. And if all of you recall, you should recall what Dr. Knife said. Dr. Knife said, the foremost economist in Jamaica, the foremost, meaning the man, when not talk about economy in Jamaica, is none other than, and I was expecting him to say somebody else. And him say, Dr. Andre Haughton. And if you also remember him say, this man is a IMF fellow. Him say, when the IMF come Jamaica, this is the man them consult with before them come, right? To prepare themselves for deal with whoever them are deal with in Jamaica. They didn't call up Dr. Logarithm, Tropical Rhythm, Clark. They didn't call Dr. Clark, right? This is the man them call. And so we are extremely pleased and honored to have this man with us today, because this man, him can't walk with kings and sit down with poor people, with paupers. Him can't talk the language. Any setting you put him in, him can't talk the language. And I just adore the way him express himself, depending on the situation he's in. We're going to ask him today, say, nobody nice up the thing, because actually he's not a man like that. Him talk straight. You know what? Me I talk too much. I'm going to bring him on now. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Dr. Andre Haughton.
Hey, yes, good day, Ratigan. Good day to your listeners as well. Lots of blessings to you, don't it?
But that's how the thing set, my brother. So the thing.
Yeah, Mike, so you look so familiar.
I tell you, I didn't want it to say something before you bring up the money that's a Ratigan.
All right, let me take him off and then say, hold on, the dog. Hold on. Very nice. There's something there.
Pretend that him not see me. Yeah? Pretend that him not see me. People in the comment section. You see, Mr. Ratigan said this man walk with kings and not lose the common touch. This man right here, Dr. Andre Haughton, one of the most brilliant minds in Jamaica. And he was the one that got me interested in politics, or even trying to understand what politics must do for us as Jamaicans. And trust me, man, I remember the first political meeting I went to, I had on a red hoodie and I had it over my head in Montego Bay. And I said, you know what? Everybody was jumping about celebrating politics. And I said, you know, only person I wanted to touch was Dr. Andre Haughton, because I remember on YouTube, I saw him and he said that corrupt politician must be a thing of the past in Parliament as a senator, and everybody was just numb. And he said, yeah, man, you hear me? Corrupt politician must be a thing of the past. And this is the reason why I really do respect this man. And I remember when I was talking to him and in a forum, and he was just there, just listening to everybody. And when this man started to speak, man, trust me, you can hear and you can feel the universe, a wealth of knowledge. And he was just so humble and so calm, and he was able to touch everybody and get every information resonating with people. Without further ado, bring back the man.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, just before I bring him back, let me just say, people, every Monday night at 7 o'clock, you need to tune in to Make We Talk Current Affairs with Jeffrey Vumvavi Tavares. This man talk up the thing on a Monday night. He might have some outstanding guests, and the conversation is just scintillating. We don't need to go over there. Just as much as I want to come here and get some learning and things like that. I remember learning here is shared, because me I learn to, my guests I learn, everybody I learn over here, It's a community affair. Similarly, when you go to Jeffrey's program on a Monday night, it's the same thing. And you can participate because Jeffrey actually Him take phone calls. As you know, we don't take phone calls on this program because we don't want to upset the flow. So that's why we have the Wednesday night program where you can call and we can discuss things further. So again, I'm inviting all of you to check out Jeffrey Tavares' program, Current Affairs, every Monday night at 7 o'clock, New York time. Well, actually, Jamaica time, to we're on the same time zone right now on YouTube. Again, Jeffrey Tavares, Current Affairs, Make We Talk channel, YouTube channel, 7 o'clock every Monday night. Big up yourself, Vumbavi. Now, without further ado, second time around, Dr. Andre Haughton. Yes, sir.
Second time around, it's good to be here. You know, it's really good to come on talk shows like these to discuss where we are as a country and what we need to do in order for us to move collectively forward, because it's a new year, but it's the same continuous journey. You know, in mathematics, we say that when you have different movements of the economy, it goes up and down. But the key thing is that there are no points of discontinuity. Points of discontinuity make functions difficult to differentiate and to integrate. And that is why Jamaica is blessed, because though we have been down, we have had an economic structure that has been connected to itself over the past and towards the foreseeable future, which makes it easier to analyze.
All right, Doc, I tell you what, a lot of people here know you, but a lot of people here, and a lot of people here hear about you, and some people, them don't know you, them never hear about you. So just pretend like nobody here ever hear about Dr. Andre Haughton. I take as long as you want, because this is your house, you know, right? We just sit down and we have a discussion. Just tell us, who is Dr. Andre Haughton? Tell us about his beginnings and how did he end up where he is.
Yeah, hey guys. And my name is Dr. Andre Haughton. I am currently a senior lecturer in the Department of Economics at the UWI Mona. I specialize in macroeconomics and international finance, mainly econometric applications. I am from Mount Salem, Montego Bay. I went to Cornwall College. Whilst I was there, I studied accounting. And fundamentally, for me, when I was young and they asked about professions as to what you want to become, I had an aunt who was an accountant. So, you know, what you tend to do is to emulate others in your family who are vividly available to you. I got introduced to the whole concept of economics through Michael Manley's book, The Politics of Change. When I was in third form, I think we got a couple of detentions, but at Cornwall, the detentions are held in the library. So there was a cabinet filled with Michael Manley's books. And you know, you went to detention the first time, you saw the books, you don't pay them any money. You went the second time, you see the books. So the third time, I was curious as to see what was important about these books, why we had so many of them in a special cabinet at the school. And I took one out, The Politics of Change it was. And I read about the whole concept of self-reliance and developing independence as an individual, and how collective independent individuals can come together and create collective independent country. And when I looked across the length and breadth of Jamaica as a young boy, what I recognized with my own mother working in the hotel industry, my uncle working in the hotel industry, my aunt working in the hotel industry, and I recognized that this industry, though it provided employment, was not enough to provide a decent standard of living for those who it employed. So from the beginning, I recognized that if I were to become a professional, then if I wanted to earn higher income, joining the tourism industry, as I saw my uncle, my aunts, and my mother did, would not be sufficient. And then I started understanding a bit more about industries, right? What's an industry? An industry is a collective of similar businesses that are working towards a particular goal within a particular economic boundary. And Jamaica, though we place a lot of emphasis on the tourism industry, we made much of our wealth from the agricultural industry when sugar was king. So when Jamaica was the pearl of the Antilles, they earned much of their income from three crops: sugar, cotton, and tobacco. And when I thought about it, I said to myself, well, I have to get a broader understanding of history, and I want to pursue a career in economics. I did history, I also did mathematics, and so on and so forth. But I got introduced to economics when I went to the University of the West Indies. I did my first course in microeconomics. I got the highest grade in the class. And from then, I decided that I was going to do a double major in economics and accounting. When I completed my first degree, I graduated at the top of my class in econ and accounts. And at that time, I was on a scholarship from KPMG, Pete Marwick. But when I analyzed the accounting profession versus a profession being an economist, I recognized that being an accountant is good and I could be employed by any of the top two firms. I got job offers from both of them, KPMG as well as the other one name, not Ernest and Young, the other one, remember me telling you, Price Waterhouse Cooper. Price Waterhouse Coopers. Where are they? I haven't seen them in a long time. And I decided that I was going to pursue my master's degree. I got a scholarship from Thomas Delarue. They are the ones who print banknotes for more than 60 odd countries across the world. They print banknotes for many countries in Europe, for many countries in Africa, for many countries in the Middle East. As a matter of fact, when I visited their factory back in 2004 as a visiting scholar, on their paper mill was the Egyptian money with the pharaoh head running, and that was very, very revealing to me, because at that time I was now beginning to recognize how the global economy functions, where it is a company that prints the money for most of these countries and not them who print money for themselves. So Jamaica practically was buying their money. And at the time, I was interested in international financial topics, and my first research was to examine what would happen if Jamaica was to dollarize the economy from a financial situation. Now, what is dollarization? Dollarization is the process through which a country adopts the currency of another country. So, take Jamaica, for example. Many of us sit here and we say, okay, Jamaica should just use the US. Why we use the Jamaican? We buy goods from abroad in the US. We spend the US mainly, and we love the US. We see the US as a benchmark currency. Why not use the US? So what I did was to create a portfolio of assets, right? Domestic assets denominated in domestic currency, domestic assets denominated in foreign currency, and foreign assets denominated in foreign currency, and to see what would instigate persons to invest in each of these assets. Inextricably, what would push persons to dollarize by investing in domestic assets denominated in foreign currency and foreign assets denominated in foreign currency versus domestic assets denominated in domestic currency. Remember, coming out of the 90s, we had FinSac, and what had happened was that we had accumulated a significant amount of debt through that restructuring process, and we needed to understand, certainly from a technocrat's point of view, where the country ought to go as it relates to our spending habits and what would coerce people to invest domestically versus invest abroad. The paper was well received. I mean, we presented it at the Bank of Jamaica, and they appreciated the work that we push. Deposit insurance played an important role in coercing people to invest in domestic currency. Surely you know that the interest rate differential between what you earn on foreign currency versus what you earn in domestic currency also played a role, as well as the whole idea of exchange rate gains and losses. Now, as you know, domestic interest rates are going to differ from foreign interest rates. What would influence someone to invest in Jamaica versus invest in the United States, right? One thing is that the US economy is a little bit more stable, right? They have stabler prices, they have higher income, macroeconomic stability from the overall operational aspects seem to be more fluent. So they can afford to offer lower interest rates and still fetch investment because of the robustness of their economy. Now, take an economy like Jamaica into consideration, where our economy is not so robust, right? We are susceptible to external shocks because we're what is called a small island developing state. And a small island developing state is susceptible to whatever occurs outside of itself has a significant impact on what occurs inside of the country. And that's what spurred much of my research when I recognized that most of the international institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations, the Oxfam, the World Economic Forum, most of these international organizations tend to do a lot of research on developed countries. And then they use the results that they get for these developed countries to make recommendations for the developing world. And that is why our economics has been going so wrong for so long, because you have a situation where somebody is used to snow and you build a snow boots for them, you build a jacket and tie for them, and when you come to someone who is used to sunshine, you say that you have to wear this jacket and tie to church, you have to wear this jacket and tie to every formal gathering, not taking into consideration that the place is hot and a jacket might not be suitable for you at that time, unless, of course, it is made of linen where breeze can pass through it going and coming. And that is the fundamental challenge that we faced as an economy. They use these prescriptions that were made for more developed countries and to impose these prescriptions on countries like Jamaica, countries like Trinidad, countries like Ghana, countries like Sierra Leone, Kenya, these countries. And at that time, I recognized that there was a gap in the research, right? And as a result, I decided that I am going to use my time to fill that gap. And what's that gap? There are idiosyncrasies in Jamaica. There are idiosyncrasies even in America. In every single country, there are factors that impact their economies differently, that allows the macroeconomy to function differently, and there is no one size fits all solution. So after completing my master's, I lectured at the university for 2 years. I lectured a course called Caribbean Economic Problems. I actually developed that course as well to where it is now. And that outlined a lot of the challenges that we face as small island developing state. We are import dependent. Most of us offer the same sorts of things, like sun, sun, and sea. And for us in the Caribbean, one issue I must highlight that jump out at us was that we tend to trade similar goods. So when you take the Caribbean, for example, and you take the Caribbean single market economy, you take CARICOM, outside of the Dominican Republic and outside of Trinidad, much of what we have to offer to the rest of the world is sand and sea, right? Because we don't have a robust manufacturing industry that is pushing out goods and services. And we did not take the time out to measure technology and innovation and how we needed it to impact the different industries. So my research at that time started looking at money, how money functions. So I looked at the whole idea of interest rate pass through, which is when the central bank changes their interest rate, the commercial banks are to pass on the benefits to the consumers if it's a falling interest rate from the Bank of Jamaica. Then Bank of Nova Scotia should also drop their interest rate to make loans more accessible to you, as well as to make it easier for the banking transaction to take place. But what my research highlighted was that not only is the interest rate pass-through asymmetric, meaning that there's a difference between when there's a cost associated to when there's a benefit associated. And what do I mean by that? Whenever the Bank of Jamaica increase their interest rate, it imposes an additional cost on commercial banks. Those commercial banks immediately pass on those costs to their consumers in the form of higher interest rates for loans and etc. etc. But when the commercial bank, right, pass on those costs, following the increase in interest rates from the central bank, which is the Bank of Jamaica. Whenever the Bank of Jamaica then turn around and reduces interest rates, these same commercial banks do not reduce their interest rate so that us, the consumer, can benefit. So when the interest rate increase and we get the high costs, they pass it on right away. But when the interest rates fall so that we can have easier access to loans, they do not. And I had to highlight that because money is like the lifeblood of the economy. So that was one of my very first research. I did my PhD during the global financial crisis. If you can remember the global financial crisis of 2008, it spurred out of the idea of increasing prices and a price bubble within the asset market. Now, what are assets? Assets are things of value that appreciate over time. If they are nurtured, they depreciate if they are not nurtured. So, you have depreciating assets, you have appreciating assets, things of value. Now, what we did was to look at the interaction between government policy and asset prices, not just for the developed world, but also for the developing world, because it was the government through monetary policy that was tasked with the mandate of appeasing the crisis across the world. So what did my research show? My research showed that there was a difference in how the asset bubble impacted the developing world versus how it impacted the developed world. There was a difference between how monetary policy, which is the central bank changing of the interest rate, how it impacted the stock market in Jamaica versus how it impacted the stock market in America when the Federal Reserve changed their whole monetary policy. Another issue that was important to me was also the idea of us having a single economy. And what my research showed is that in order for us to benefit from CARICOM, we must have a single currency across the entire Caribbean. And that was the foundation. I came back in 2011 because at the time, all the global economies were in challenges. And it was better for me to come back home to try to assist Jamaica to become quote unquote sustainable rather than staying in England to try to assist them. We've been through too much slavery. So now it was time for us to use the robustness of our minds to help to liberate and free the economic prosperity of our own people. I came back in a time when it was JDX and NDX, when we were restructuring the economy, when Bruce Golding could not sign an IMF agreement because they did not had at the time they didn't have enough economic prowess to chant out to the IMF a proper plan, but we did. And Dr. Peter Phillips at the time played an instrumental role. At the time, I was working with Edward Siaga at the United Nations funded office that he had at the UWI Mona. We wrote a book, my first book, Developing Sustainable Balance of Payments in Small Countries. Lessons from Jamaica. What's the balance of payments? The balance of payments records all the foreign currency transactions of a particular country. So it looks at all the income and revenue that's coming in and all the income and revenue that's coming out. It's broken down in three: the current account, the capital account, and the reserves. The current account basically has goods and services, right, which is import and exports. Along with that, it has what's called primary and secondary income. Primary and secondary income. Primary income, you can look at wages that are paid to the tourism workers. Secondary income, remittances, money that are transferred to Jamaica, and so on and so forth. The capital account looks at the purchase of capital, purchase of assets. When a Jamaican takes up their money and they buy a stock in America, they can take up their money and they buy a house in America, or a Jamaican take up their money, or they invest in a factory in America. Take Golden Cross as an example. That's income coming out. When a US come with their FDI, foreign direct investment, that's money coming in. So the capital account records those capital money for investment purposes. And basically the reserves is just practically the difference between the two. What do you have left to cover what your expenses should be? And my book at the time showed that instead of measuring the reserves in terms of weeks of imports. We should measure the reserves in terms of a percentage of GDP. Because remember, reserves represent idle capital, right? And imagine you have a ton load of cash put down that's not generating any income. That's wasted reserves, right? Or if you have too little cash put down where you are called upon to use it as a percentage of a GDP, that means you have too little reserves. So measuring the reserves as a percentage of GDP would increase the efficient use of the reserves rather than trying to measure it in terms of weeks of imports. I continued lecturing at the UWI. My second book is on productivity, overcoming productivity challenges in small countries. I wrote that one just after the COVID-19 pandemic when I lost the election. We face productivity issues, and that everybody is beginning to recognize that now. But we recognized that a long time ago. And that book, they're both online. You can go and search for them. One, developing sustainable balance of payments in small countries. Two, overcoming productivity challenges. I'm going to wrap up shortly. I recognized that being a technocrat, when I give advice to a minister of government, they tend to use what benefits them, what benefits their investors, but not what benefits a nation of such remarkable people. And I began getting frustrated, right? Because if you are spending time doing research that you believe can uplift the nation, can assist increase in our income levels, because that is what is about. Jamaica is a $15 billion economy. One person in America is making $15 billion. So you get to see that we are stuck in a economic deadlock. And that's my second book was Escaping Macroeconomic Deadlock, but I had to put it on pause in order to write this productivity book. So it's now my third book, Escaping Macroeconomic Deadlock. And it's essential. And that was what pushed me to become a politician, because I'm saying to myself, I'm here doing this research, making recommendations to these politicians, and it's up to their discretion. So why not make it up to my discretion? Since I'm sure when I get the chance, I will be in a position to execute, not just for Tom Jones or for Jane and Harry or for Butch and Chuch, but for everyone. Because as we are out of many one people, Jamaica is very special to the world. I have friends from all over the world, and they are waiting for Jamaica to wake up and realize who we are and what is important. So, yeah, that's my journey.
Quite a remarkable journey, sir. Quite a remarkable journey for somebody who, I don't know your age, but the people in the chat I say, boy, you look like you're 16. So them don't know, some of them indicates you lie, you couldn't do all of them things and still look so young. You know, but it's a tribute to your genes, brethren. It's a tribute to your genes. Now, look, there's so many questions I like to start out with, but you know what? I'm going to defer to the panelists here. And let me start with Kevin. Kevin, talk to Dr. Andre Haughton.
Yeah, big ups again to the real Dr. Dre. First thing, let me get this one out the way.
Blessings, Kevin.
How much detention you want to get, so?
Yeah.
At the time, we were in a class called 9-5 at Cornwall College. Now, anyone who attends Cornwall College knows that 8-5 and 9-5, let me put it this way. When I was in grade 7 and I finished the year, and the next year when I was supposed to go back to school, I went and I looked at every other class except 8-5. And I went home and I tell my mother, Mommy, it looked like them not accept me back at school, come and see my name. It's about the day after, them come and say, okay, see your name upon 8-5. Devastating. Those classes, you know, get teachers, you know, get nobody not pay attention to 8-5. And it's not the dunces class. I mean, at Cornwall, it's stream 8-1, 8-6, 8-2, 8-5, then 8-3, 8-4. But 8-5 for some reason have a reputation. 8-5 and 9-5. Bad reputation. And sometimes when you get the tension, it's not you, you know. It's not you, it's the class. So it's like you get caught up in a situation, and that is the strata system that Jamaica operates. If you have some people who grew up in certain communities, no care how good you be, they end up in certain category. And if you are not strong enough to overcome that categorization, then you end up stuck. But it's not where you start. You have to use adversities as opportunities for greatness. And as Black people that we are coming out of slavery, where we haven't been empowered, we haven't been given land ownership with titles where we can leverage for capital. We haven't been given the sense of thought that academics is important for us to uplift our lives, right? If you look across the length and breadth of Jamaica now, many of the young people ascribe to what they call fully dones. And I do empathize with them, because if you listen to them, you will figure out that they are not dones, they have sense. But how the economy and how the system has relegated them to that marginal existence, then they believe they have to now use that dunce as a tool to create opportunities for themselves. So we have to begin to understand the culture of the country. There was one point in time when Black people, young boys, couldn't attend Cornwall College. Mike and Manley played an instrumental role in that shift with the common entrance exam. And I was able to benefit from the common entrance exam. And that is why I have dedicated my life to providing resources and to research what is necessary to change want to see, because we have been really disrupted in our thinking, and we have really been disadvantaged by our experiences. And many of us tend to judge the others without understanding the full length and breadth of the travesty that was brought upon us, and what it will take from our leaders to inculcate in our population of people a mindset of self-reliance and independence that is skill and educational dependent. Why? Because the young people wake up every day and they hear from business owners who, me not going to school, you know, and look how much money me have, look how much this me have, look how much that me have. So even the business people in Jamaica who hire bright people to help them to make their businesses better. I mean, let me not use Jamaica, because Jamaica is predominantly commerce, so it's buying and selling. So that is why we don't value the brain that much, because there are few businesses that innovate in Jamaica. And in order to innovate, you need brilliant minds to assist you to innovate. Jamaican people, they are mainly merchants. So they do what their friend is doing. You know, you see a man selling ladder bag, you start selling ladder bag right away. You see a man selling umbrella, you start selling umbrella right away. You see a man open a restaurant, you open a restaurant right away, without thinking about how to diversify your product or how to grow your product. So you get to see that many businesses operate on a subsistence level, and they never get a chance to grow and to become multinational industries because of how we approach life and we approach business. So they get the idea that being dunce is the best thing to do if you have money. So they are skipping out the whole process of self-development that is necessary to graduate, to assist the country to move. So I'm saying to them, if we don't need smart people, that means we don't need no plumbers, we don't need no electrician, we don't need no sanitary engineers, a garbage man. We don't need no doctors, no lawyers, no, because the economy just can function off money, right? Once you have money, you can get things done, right? And that is type mentality that people have been inculcating into the young people. And when they turn to do negative things that can get them the money like that, then we turn around and say, oh God, look at what they're doing. But when them go to work, them boss cuss them, say, me, the boss, we rich, don't have no education, so you don't need it.
Right.
Before we bring in Jamaica, let me just Marcy Blessed so that 2 years I used to get detention at school, enough detention. Marcy, my situation is similar to Dr. Andre Haughton. I'm not as educationally gifted or academically successful as him. I would no way, no day, no time put my walk in them shoes. But what I can tell you is that, yeah, used to get a whole heap of detention at Meadowbrook. In fact, I set a record at Meadowbrook. I was the first sixth farmer in the history of Meadowbrook forgot to get detention. It was embarrassing. I'm going to sit down in a room with first farmer, second farmer, third farmer. Come on, a certain farmer.
You see, that is it with Jamaican people too. You come and you discuss some things and you talk for 20 minutes and you talk about the economics, you talk about that. You use 30 seconds and say, in order for you to be introduced to Michael Manley's theory, you had to go to the library. And in order for you to go to the library, you had to get detention to go to the library. And the media focused on the detention rather than the fact that it had to go so in order for me to understand the principles and concepts of self-reliance and independence bestowed on us by Michael Manley. And it's the same thing. I go to Parliament and I talk off my head. And one day I go say, we have breast cancer month. And them say, who we talk about breast cancer? Nobody know and do it in our caucus. I'm say, me do it, man. Me talk about breast cancer. And when I went into the room, I say, all right, I empathize with the woman because I am a breast man. When me have baby, I love breast. Breast milk grow me. By the time I not ever come off good, Auntie Faye first that message me, oh, it's like you, she said, you drink this, you milk the cow and kick over the bucket. By the time I come out of Parliament, man, headlines, Dr. Haughton is a breast man.
No, yeah.
So it's like we tend to be, as a nation, so trivial-minded that we get so distracted by the most trivial of things, and we don't find ourselves in the cusp of excellence where we can hear the trivial things, make fun of them, but don't lose the substance of what is being expressed and what is to be understood from the message. And you've seen this straight across the board in everything, everywhere. People them brain so trivial. You go up on TikTok, Chinese people them, you can't do no foolishness on TikTok. You have to invent something. Jamaican people them they on TikTok every day. I do nonsense.
Yes.
There must be anybody who can do the most outrageous nonsense, make the most money. When are we going to realize now that the technological boom has passed us by from 1950? And that is why Jamaica has an economy making only 15 billion, while Dominica or Aniva is making 100 billion. When are we going to realize that we focus on too much trivial things as smart kings? You know who is Francis Bacon? Francis Bacon was sent on the first expedition from English Europe to Africa to go and scope us out to try colonize us. In his diaries, when he went back, you know what he said to the king and queen over there? When I met people, the hostel that they gave me to stay in, because then quarantine them are new people. So then I just let them out in a place. You know, then time the disease and things. So then quarantine them for a while and observe them. The hostels that they quarantine us in was fit for any king, any queen in our land. For the time we were there, we get the freshest fruits, the freshest vegetables. I walked the length and breadth of the land, and I didn't see one beggar, neither did I see a thief. It is going to take something astronomical to break these people. And since then, Rome take them time and devise a plan. So much so now that in Jamaica, so much of people them turn beggar and thief. So Rome has succeeded in what they set out to do and turn us now into trivial thinking people. So one we see me as Dr. Haughton and say, okay, he's such a brilliant person. But I want to see in them own self and say, I too have the same ability that Dr. Haughton does. He is not special. I too have the ability to be disciplined because that is what it takes. To be mindful that in the future, the country is going to depend on me. No, everybody I look Jesus. So trivial with the time, trivial with the utterances, trivial with the research, trivial with the experience, but you are look somebody serious now to save you.
Yeah, I understand the point. And let me just say, Marcy, no, the doctor not come after you. But you know, him just said,
no man. I'm just
we just want to understand that.
Oh no, the person who said she got detention?
No, she said me get detention. But
oh no, man, it's not about her or is it about me? It's about a nation of such remarkable people.
Yeah,
and what it will take for us to become who we are.
And that's why people come around here, because them consider this similar to a classroom, but it's a classroom without a principle or anything, because we are learn from each other. We exchange ideas. We're not talking about people, except when we are talking with the Prime Minister. When we talk with the Prime Minister, we are talking about things that he said and things that he's done, things that he's promised. But let me just say the detention thing, it make me stronger. Because I sit down there, I take it out and say, well, you know what, they might put me inside or so. Because I come from a certain place. I remember now at one point, me go school like once every 3-4 weeks because we never have money. And we live with a whole bunch of people. And we go class already where teacher look at me and says, are you in this class? We mean a sixth form. Because they never see me for a long time. And I'm say, yeah, me in that class, yeah. And she said, I haven't seen you in a long time. I say, me no. Me no see you in a long time either. But me there. So, you know, so I just said there. Jamaics, youngest member of the panel. Dr. Haughton is on the first side. Go ahead. Talk to him. I have some questions for him about macroeconomics, but now wait till, you know.
It's a gonna get down there, but trust me, man. Each time I hear Dr. Haughton speak, it's a blessing, man. And again, the humbleness of the man and the wealth of knowledge. So thank you to come back from England to say that you're playing your part in nation building. It is a great pleasure to have you back here. I remember the first time watching you on, I think, a Ras and Barley podcast, and I really enjoyed that podcast. But you answered some of my question, but this is a question that has been in the political environment. You spoke about FinSap briefly. I'm just asking you as quickly as possible, or just to break it down so the normal man on the street can understand what is FinSac and what can we learn from the experience of FinSac.
Okay, that's a pretty good question. We can't understand the FinSac without understand the overall economic construct of Jamaica's economy. Let me begin with 1970s, right? Throughout the 1970s, Jamaica embarked on a lot of nationalization, right? We nationalized banks, we nationalized transportation, we nationalized a lot of the industries in the country. And it was done with good intentions, right? It was done in order to give the country ownership of revenue generating assets, not just leaving the government to get income from just taxes, but to give the government the ability to have multiple income streams, as well as to give Jamaica ownership of much of what had been owned by foreigners, right? Now, throughout that time, we went through two significant events in the 70s, right? We went through the first and second oil price shock. Now, these shocks escalated the price of oil. Oil was an import, and as a result, Jamaica had balance of payment problems where we needed foreign currency to purchase our foreign demand for oil and other goods. Now, at that time, also in the economy was a push towards the whole self-reliant issue by Michael Manley and so on and so forth. Now, because prices got so high, coming into the 80s, Jamaica's reserves were beginning to deplete, right? Now, throughout the 80s, Edward Seaga practiced a different type of economic management, a more liberal economy, trying to privatize some of the industries, as well as to put import restrictions on a lot of the things that were brought into the country. If you ever heard about goods being married, when you went to the shop, you have to buy a tin of sardine, you have to buy a pack of sanitary napkin alongside it, you're buying a pound of flour, you have to buy toothpaste, and so on and so forth. That was designed in order to have controls in our consumption demand and to limit what we imported from abroad. Now, Siaga practiced a lot of exchange rate management controls, right? Because he was very interested, so as myself, in maintaining a currency of value. And we'll get to that shortly. In America, they preach about them having a strong currency. But when neoliberal economists talk about the developing world, they encourage us to depreciate our currency, to quote unquote sell more to the rest of the world. But if you don't have more to sell, it means you can't sell more. So the cheaper price that they want us to have to sell this huge amount of goods couldn't work. It worked for a country like China. China have 1 billion people and put 500 million of them for work for cheaper and not them and make goods for the rest of the world. They can survive off that. But a country like Jamaica, we have the best goods, the best yam, the best coffee, the best ginger, the best that. You know, our thing can sell on a bulk level. Our thing have to sell on a connoisseur level. Now, because Siaga was interested in maintaining a very tight exchange rate management system, he had to use much of the reserves to sterilize the market. Whenever demand exceeded supply, he had to what we call sterilize the market by furnishing foreign exchange. Sterilizing the market 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, 6 year, 7 year, up to 1988, we had depleted much of our reserves to assist the country to maintain a particular high value. So throughout the 80s, Jamaica currency depreciated from about $1.20 to about $4, something around there. In 1988, we were hit by Gilbert. When we were hit by Gilbert damaged the entire economy. And to allow the economy to recover after Gilbert, we needed inflows of foreign currency. Huge amount, because Siaga was in negative reserves, right? Meaning that we owed to the rest of the world. And we were in a catastrophic crisis. At that time, right, the IMF went to him and the negotiations were not completed. And the elections were called in 1989 when the IMF at that time came to Jamaica to discuss how our economic management is going to be restructured. The IMF said at the time that we need to implement a 10-point plan called the Washington Consensus. And I want your listeners to go and search up the Washington Consensus on YouTube or on Google or whichever search engine that you may prefer. The Washington Consensus. That was a 10-point plan that Jamaica had to implement in order for them to get a drawdown for the structural adjustment policies from the IMF, right? Now, the entire plan wasn't good, but there were a few pillars of the plan that were devastating. First among them was that Jamaica had to know, instead of maintaining the crawling peg exchange rate that Siaga had throughout the 80s, we had to fully liberalize our financial sector, meaning allow our exchange rate to be determined by demand and supply. Now, obviously, if you are not going to sterilize the market with foreign currency to assist the exchange rate to maintain a particular stable level, if you said you can now, instead of getting a quota amount of foreign currency from your bank per day, per month, per week, you can now get any amount at any time. There was a bank rush on foreign currency, and the Jamaican dollar exchange rate moved from 6 to 1 in 1990 to 25 to 1 by 1992. That was 6 into 25, 4, so it was like a 400% increase in the value of the or decrease in the value of the currency. 400% decrease in the value of our currency. Look at it as a depreciation. A 400% increase in the value of the US. Now, banks who had their foreign currency denominated debt saw their debt increase from 6 to 1 to 25 to 1. So imagine you owe 6 million US. You saw your debt moving from 6 million US to 25 million US. You have your debt denominated, say you have a debt of 10 million, yes, you gone to 40 million. You have a debt of 100 million, it gone to 400 million. So they now were unable to pay their debts. You recognize? So the entire banking system at the time, remember, many of these banks had pension funds, they had domestic investment. I myself had money in Central National as a young boy at the time. And the banking system now, because the bank's debt increased fourfold, they could not pay it. They could not pay it. And as a result, the banking sector in Jamaica was on the brink of collapse. Now, money represents the lifeblood of the economy. It is how transactions take place. It's an exchange for goods and services, and sometimes a store of value depending on how you use it. If you have no medium of exchange, you have no store of value, your entire economy is going to grow underground. What did PJ Patterson and Michael Manley decide to do? They decide to establish the Financial Sector Adjustment Company, FinSAC. And FinSAC was the remedy to assist the banking sector, the Jamaican financial sector, to regain footing and to stabilize itself while it restructured out of that high debt it had accumulated through exchange rate depreciations and devaluations between 1990 and 1992. In order to do so, they had to borrow because we didn't have the foreign currency readily available to us domestically, so they had to borrow. They borrowed, they refinanced, they restructured, the debt increased, but the debt gradually came down closer towards 2002. And yeah, that's the FinSAC story.
Oh, thank you. Just a follow-up question to that. What are the lessons that we can take from the FinSAC debacle?
Yeah, the first lesson is that we must understand the macroeconomy before we make broad-scale macroeconomic decisions. The first point that we note as economists is that in order for us to liberalize the economy, we had to have the sufficient controls into play, meaning that you cannot do wholesale liberalization as we did then. You have to liberalize in chunks. And the second thing to note is that not everything the IMF recommends is healthy. When I went there in 2017 as a fellow, I spoke to a couple of the lawyers who worked on the Washington Consensus with Jamaica, and they were very apologetic to what occurred at the time to us, because they recognized that Jamaica, we saw the blunt of the disadvantage because we were naive to what was taking place. And that's a fundamental lesson to know that the economics that govern developed countries is a different economics that governs developing countries. And we need economists like myself who are developing country oriented to really unravel the idiosyncrasies and to say, look, we cannot do this way, we can try it that way or that way. Let us explore the options, and to put a counter proposal on the table with the IMF instead of a set of people who do not understand economics at all, who now are going to take wholesale what the IMF says because they lack understanding. So that's a fundamental lesson. So while our leaders study law, they study politics, right? And anybody can tell you, I'm probably the worst politician, but I am the best leader. And that is what Jamaica needs at this time. Leaders, not politicians.
Let me at this point, let me just throw something out. Let me just play a quick video, a few seconds, maybe a minute, Dr. Haughton. And then I want to ask you a question about macroeconomics and some of the comments you just made. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on then. Kevin is here, so I'm not worry about none. Oh, here it is. Here it is. All right. 1 second. Here we go.
Essential quality for effective leadership in today's environment is clear vision. It might sound a bit contrite, probably overused, and it won't break the sound barrier. People have heard it before. But I think it's one of the things we're struggling with at the moment in the world, which is, what is our vision of what we're building? And then more specifically as Africans, what is the vision of what we're doing? And what does that vision look like in the next 10 years, the next 25 years, and the next 50 years? So I think that's probably the most important ingredient. The second most important ingredient would be a clear sense of purpose. Anywhere where you find leaders who have inspired a generation, what allowed them to coalesce that generation is a single mission, a clear sense of purpose. And so what we see with entrepreneurs who are able to build businesses and scale businesses, not only here, but across the continent, is that there's a very clear sense of why they're doing it and a very clear view of what the future looks like.
All right. Use that to set up this question. You mentioned naivety, and you also mentioned to understand macroeconomics before making decisions. Now, our last Minister of Finance, well, not the second to last one, because now we have Minister Pavel Williams, but I'm referring to Dr. Clark. He came in from the perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have to get the macroeconomics down before we can even start dealing with the microeconomics. And to that extent, they looked at the GDP to debt ratio and said, if we can get this down from 140, whatever it was, 141, 144, the goal is to get it to 70. That 60. Everything, 60. 60, yeah. Everything is going to be okay. Based on what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like that course of action was flawed. Am I correct? And if I'm correct, what would you have done in that situation?
When you say that course of action was flawed, I mean, every country needs to be able to repay their debt, because you borrow the people the money, you must find yourselves in a position to be able to repay that debt. You look at a country like Japan, whose debt to GDP ratio is 200 and odd %, and Japan has been flourishing, right? But that doesn't negate the fact that Jamaica was in a bad position. We were using almost half of our budget for debt repayment. And if you have recurrent expenditure, right, and you have a debt of almost half your budget, then surely you would want to reduce that debt because it is important. However, you think about, and this is the beauty about macroeconomics, right? It breaks down the economy into a simple microcosm and makes it easier to understand. Think about your household as the country, right? The household that you live, your wife, your children, right? If you don't have no wife, no children, you alone live, you live with your mother, whatever the case may be. Just think about that household as the country. You are Jamaica. Now think about you just putting all your effort into reducing debt, right? You're not putting any effort into gaining a better education. You're not putting any effort into putting in appliances in the house, buy appliances so that you can use these appliances to make your life more comfortable. You're not putting any effort into ensuring or expanding the house so that when you have more family come over or you get more children, they can be comfortable in that house. So you just find yourself paying down the debt. What that does is that from the debt point of view, you are now freeing up space in your future income to be used for other things. But, and if you can recall, in 2016, Dr. Clark and Andre Haughton said that in 4 years, Jamaica should be growing by 5% per annum. Remember that. A colleague of mine, Samuel Brathwaite, in the Department of Economics, right, and a few others of us, did a simulation to see what it would take for us to grow by 5%. Remember, the economy can be broken down. We have about 11 different industries. All we need to see what will it take for these industries. Would you believe that it required all the industries to be growing at a high percentage altogether in order for Jamaica to grow by 5%? And in order for these industries to grow, they needed industry support, not just from the private sector, but if you recognize what Vusi was saying, is that the government has to have a clear vision as to the industries that it wants to boost in order for the country to grow. Jamaica has a clear vision about tourism, no other industry. And tourism alone is only one offering that we have. Tourism alone does not provide the growth potential to help the other industries lift themselves up by the bootstraps. I'm sure you heard when I said that we missed, and I was getting a little bit serious, but sometimes you have to bring things across serious. Me not really serious in myself. I'm a very jovial person, but I take the nation's business very seriously. We missed the technological boom. In 1950, technology represented 0% of China's GDP. No measurement whatsoever. Technology always exists, but it no measure. Today, technology represents over 32% of China's GDP. Tell me, what percentage of Jamaica GDP is technology?
I would say less than 5%.
We don't know because it's not measured.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is not measured, it means that you don't know where it is and you have no way of tracking it as to where it ought to go. And that is what I am saying, is that technology missed us 70 years ago with the third industrial revolution. Today, we're having the fourth and fifth industrial revolution simultaneously with the advent of AI and the Internet of Things and robot and ray. Each industry in Jamaica, based on the results of my book, Overcoming Productivity Challenges in Small Countries, hires more people than what it requires to produce its most efficient output. Let me repeat. Each industry, whether it want to be government, finance, education, healthcare, whichever the industry, they are hiring more people than what is required to produce their optimum. Meaning they have produced more than what they are producing today with less people than what they are producing today with more people. Government, for example, hires 30% more people than what it takes to produce their optimum. So the government can shed 30% of its weight and still produce the same amount of goods. Same thing for many of the other industries. What does this mean? This means that whenever these industries find themselves in complicated situations that they need to figure out, instead of getting the technological complement as well as getting the skill complement to operate these technological advanced machinery, advanced software, advanced whatever technology, they hire another person horizontally to assist the person beside them to figure out a vertical problem. So we end up in a too many cooks spoil the broth situation. And as a result, 2017, 2018, 2019, Jamaica still was growing by an average 1%. So economic growth is not a hypothesis. Economic growth is a clear vision and plan as to where you ought to go and what you need to do. And that is why, as a macroeconomic practitioner, you are better equipped to make the right decisions rather than a man who is a mathematician who thinks that you can just say 5 minus 4 equal 1 and it just come out of nowhere. That mathematics has to be applied to real scenarios, to real goods, to real services, to real people, to real lives. And that is the fundamental challenge. So now, what does this mean? Jamaica has done very well to reduce our debt. And we are very appreciative of it, because one of the challenges that we faced was that almost half the budget, 44%, was being used for debt servicing. Coupled that with recurring expenditure, we had less than 5% of the budget for capital expenditure. Now we have more than 10% of the budget that can go to capital expenditure. Too many people believe that the government has no role to play in business development. Let me repeat that. Many people believe that the role of the government is just to collect tax and spend on recurrent expenditure. A country like Germany is a socialist country. A country like Switzerland is a socialist country. The only difference between socialism and capitalism is not how money is earned, but how money is redistributed. Michael Manley attempted it, but he took on too much on his plate without the necessary support structure around him. So you get to realize he had the vision, but the people around him were not on the mission. Jamaica, at this critical juncture in our life, need to figure out how to reduce the amount of persons without high school education from 65% to 10%. We must figure out, and the school system is another thing. It has been failing us. So you get to realize that no, many of the young people don't see themselves benefiting from the high school system. So then just nobody go. Them go learn something on YouTube. Them go learn something on Udemy. Them go learn something on Akan Economy. Akan Academy. And they use that to earn their income. Some of them not go learn nothing at all. Them go learn it on Canvas, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. And that is their forte. So not because, for example, we say 65% of the population have no high school diploma, means that 65% of the population are dunce. No. 65% of the population, or a percentage of that, have lost hope in the high school system. And therefore, we need to recognize as a country, and as Vusi said, what is the mission? What do we want? Do we continue to adopt everything from abroad and complicate our... Hey, me used to do enough complicated research, you know. My research used to complicated, like, whoa, when you see me build an econometric model, man, come on, man. Oxford, man. You get me? But then me realize, oh my God, may I build this complicated model? But the Jamaican economy is not so complicated. So may I build some level 10 model when the Jamaican economy is still there, level 2. So we skip out the level 2 analysis, the level 3 analysis, and go on a level 10 analysis just because we want to keep up as researchers with international peers without properly delving into the idiosyncrasies of our country. And that's a fundamental challenge, because it come like when you're playing football and a man cannot control, cannot pass the ball, does not have self-awareness of their position on the field. But as them get it, them want to run with it, them want dribble, them want plot, them want to one a fancy style, because that is sexy. That look good to the crowd in an individual basis, but that not fit in with the team. So the team have certain individual players who look fancy on the ball. We're going to lose. So we find ourselves in 2025 coming out of a recession in 2024, when we had hoped that by 2019, 2020, we should be growing by 5% per annum. So the economic management of which the government speaks, very good. Paying off debt, very good to the creditors who want to lend you money, so you get a higher rating. Because what happens when you go to the bank? I pay my credit card bill every month before it due. So when I check my credit rating, I 800 odd. Because I have perfect credit. I understand the system. So I can get any amount of money for borrow. But does that mean that my entire affairs is profitable and growing in a profitable way? It can signal it, but it is not it. And that is where Jamaica is at this time.
Let me just follow up by saying that, Boots has said that you have to have a clear sense of purpose and know where you're going and why you're doing what you're doing. And you illustrated and echoed that point. Now, you've pointed out to us, or you've made a distinction between paying off your credit card bill before it's due every month so that you get a higher rating and you get more access to borrowing money, versus doing the responsible thing and paying off a little bit here, but at the same time you're managing your affairs at home. And you give the example of, maybe expanding on the home, buying more goods so that the family can eat and whatnot. Two schools of thought. Let me put you in the position of a decision maker, maybe the Minister of Finance, maybe the Prime Minister. But I'm going to put you in a position now where looking at the macroeconomics, everything economics, minor, mini, everything. You know the situation Jamaica is in. You have analyzed it brilliantly. What are the steps you take to do a course correction to get us on the path of true prosperity? And I'm saying prosperity not on an individual level, but as you would argue, for the entire country.
Yeah, we have spoken of them, right? The first thing for us to begin to do is begin to measure technology as an industry and to see where we are technologically compared to the rest of the world, and not just to where the rest of the world is, but where the rest of the world is going. So we have to make a futuristic call, right? So it's forecasting. Upon measuring technology in each industry and the value of such, then we begin to look at the deficiencies and the excess labor that exists in these industries. Because if you look at it, Jamaica, we have a very low unemployment rate, right? Our unemployment has been falling. Whilst our unemployment has been falling, also our GDP has been falling. And that goes against all standard principles of macroeconomics, Haughton's law. In Haughton's law, and you know what's a law? A law written down in a stone. So Haughton's law is applicable in the United States, but it is not applicable in Jamaica. Why? Because as I said before, there are idiosyncrasies that prevent us from moving forward. So the first thing we have to do is measure technology. The second thing we have to do now is to assess and these excess labor that exists in Jamaica, in each industry, we have to now twin them up with technology. So the 30% of excess labor in the government, for example, is not as if we're going to fire them. We're not firing them. We are now going to get them technologically inclined so that they now can recognize their true value. I have 2 books because the economy is broken down into 2, right? Financial sector, goods sector. My first book is how to stabilize the financial sector. My second book, how to stabilize the real economy. There is no quick fix. From an overarching level, our productivity nationally is impacted by 2 variables: corruption and human capital deficiency. So fundamentally, in order for us to really set an example, we have to take something from Lee Kuan Yew's book and to make example out of some of these thieving leaders. Because if we don't make an example out of these thieving leaders, then we will continue to be faced by leaders who are thieves, who have no acumen to improve the standard of living of a nation of such remarkable people. And because our leaders act in such a frivolous fashion, it forces the followers to act also in such a frivolous fashion because they are not seeing the example. So one would say to you, you love the politics, a joke thing, you know, fit your heart too clean, leave it alone, it build for dirty heart people, ray. And I do go home and think about it. I mean, I said, Jano, this politics thing, I don't really mean, man, because I don't really know if I play this hypocrite thing with people, and sometimes they want you not be yourself, and the least secret thing you're being judged and ray. So we upon my mind. So if you just left you alone, then I say I'm rotted. So I go live till me 80 and have them a idiot or run a place, a thief everything. And then when me dead, me say if me know me try change it, you better me try change it, man.
Yeah.
At what point a nation of such remarkable people go recognize the true value of self, recognize the value that they have to play to enhance the value of our nation, and allow 83, less than 0.0001% of the population for manipulate us and continue to pilferage from the budget?
Hold on a second. I'm going to put this up. That's why we make the argument that this criminal must go to prison. We keep saying it. This man is a convicted criminal, and him have to go to prison. So we agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Haughton said that, listen, we can't walk away from it and say, well, make somebody else do it. We can't do that. Our country, our piece of the rock. And we need to make an example out of people like this. And if this man cannot go to prison for violating the Integrity Commission Act, and if all of the politicians who face the court, if they just walk away with a simple fine, then it sends a very, very, very powerful message. Actually, it's a powerful confirmation that these people, they don't go to prison. And that's no good for the future of Jamaica. Continue, Doctor. Sorry to interrupt you.
In every country throughout its course of history, there becomes a time when it is blessed with true leadership. Leadership that is selfless, leadership that understands its own idiosyncrasy, and leadership that believes in our ability to enterprise ourselves as a country. Too many Jamaicans are distracted by the quest for wealth, distracted by their own selfishness, distracted by the pursuit of self-fulfilling dreams. And that has put the rest of us at a disadvantage. Let me give you an example. Michael Manley was very good. He tried his best, right? He had a vision for agriculture, for industry, for all the industries. In Hanover, he devised a plan to expand agriculture and to give the people ownership of land. And they had a banana planting project that the people were given houses and they were given plots of lands to plant the banana. Now, when Michael Manley gave them the houses to live in, gave them the land, gave them the banana suckers, he had wardens going around to make sure that they're planting the bananas, right? What they did was to calculate how many banana leaves they would need to fill their acre of land. So say, for example, you need, I don't know, the acre of land can grow, I don't know, 200 banana stalk. They would grow, so you can get 10 leaves per stalk. They would grow 10, and when the warden is coming, them chop off one leaf and put in at each hole. So it appeared to the warden that they are growing bananas when it's just the leaves that are in the hole. So you as a leader can do so much, preach so much, have so much vision. But the people, if they themselves don't see themselves as leaders, if they see themselves as thief, if they see themselves as persons who are trying to exploit the system, persons who want to benefit and to get the most rewards out of nothing. If you don't see yourself as a leader, if you see Dr. Haughton as a leader, and you don't see yourself Rattigan as a leader, or my youth, yes, sir, not see himself as a leader, or the youth, I mean, Kevin, don't see himself as a leader, Jamaica is in grave danger and will continue to be where it is. It is not an individual journey. It is a journey for a team. It is not an individual approach. It's an approach for a team. And just as though I spoke about the issue when we play football, if everyone don't see themselves with the responsibility of the captain to hold up the fort, and the captain alone is seen as the person to lead, then we will continue all to be led. And that is fundamental. Very fundamental.
Kevin.
So, Doc, you gave us a little bit of an introduction to macroeconomics. Let's talk simple solutions, not easy solutions. Simple solutions. So it's taking that complex model, that economic model that you used to make, and condensing it to a simple model. How does that look? What does that look like in order to stop the bleeding, to start the healing?
Every economy is made up of three agents: the firm, the government, and the household. Now, the household sells labor to the firm in return for income. The household then uses that income to pay taxes and to buy consumption items or to save for the future. The government collects taxes from the household and the firm, while the firm provides goods and services, pay wages, and pay taxes. So it's a very simple economy. If you have an economy that looks out for just the firm at certain category, neglects the firm at certain category, doesn't look out for the household, and the firm and the government collude against the household because the firm subsidizes the government off the books so that they can now put measures in place so that the firm pay less taxes and put all the tax burden on the household, we have a problem. So fundamentally, as I said before, from a macroeconomic level, the first thing that Jamaica has to do is to look at our human capital deficiency and to minimize corruption. That's the first thing. So that's chapter 2 of the book. right? Chapter 1, compare us to Africa and the rest of the country. Then. Compare us to Asia. Look at how we have been growing over the last 50 years relative to Africa and Asia. Jamaica have the worst productivity growth in the Caribbean outside of Haiti. The worst. Compared to the Asian tigers, we have the worst again. Now, so we have to fix a simple solution. Fix corruption with an example. Look at what Lee Kuan Yew did. Look at our human capital deficiency. Chapter 3 and 4. Chapter 3 looks at the labor usage in the goods industry. And as I said before, we are using too much labor relative to what we need to produce our optimal. We need to infuse technology in these industries. Chapter 4 looks at the service industries, same thing. Using too much labor, need to infuse technology. Chapter 5 look at the issue of wages, break down corruption, break down our school system, where we are to channel people, where they need to go. Then we want to look at the whole idea of brain drain. Singapore had a quest to attract the youngest and the brightest. How did they do that? Provide housing for them, provide proper health care, proper education. Some people at Singapore are rich, some smaller too. I have a friend from Singapore, well rich. Come on my apartment and couldn't believe it, too big. For them apartment when they live in Singapore, as rich as them be, smaller than my apartment when me have a Jamaica as an example. So it's not as if some of us are not living a better standard of living than many of these countries that people are bragging about, you know. No, if people don't Singapore no own no mansion, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But them GDP per capita 100,000. So they can fly go to England when they feel like, they can do anything when they feel like. Plus, Singapore is a technologically driven country. So they are seeing technological transformations and the future in front of them at home. And that is because the government have policies in place that foster these development and are there to be able to attract and keep the youngest and the brightest. A lot of your listeners are abroad. Why are they there? 25,000 Jamaicans leave every year. The brightest will get degree and everything. To Canada, US, UK. Some of them are go Japan and China too. Why? Because of higher income. They are better paid. They have better healthcare services, better pension, etc., etc. One of the chapters compares us not to Singapore but to Mauritius. They have gone through similar sort of economic transition as we did. They have a strong service and tourism focus, but they have been able to do it better than us. So there are examples there to learn. We did a simulation to see what it will take for us to achieve our Vision 2030 goals. And what our simulation showed was that in order for us to achieve those goals, we have to be growing by at least 10% per annum. If we continue to grow at the same 1 or 2%, we won't achieve the Vision 2030 goals until 2060, which means that currently we are 30 years behind. And this means that we are not in 2020, 4 or 5 or whatever it is. It means that we are still in 1995 in Jamaica, when the rest of the world is at 2025. So this backward thinking that we have, this backward mentality, this mentality that one person, Dr. Haughton, has all the solutions, and I myself must sit and listen to him speak because he studied economics, etc., etc., is a joke. All of us now have to begin to recognize that the collective solution dwells within us, and we have to now collectively come together as a people, as a nation of such remarkable people, to pitch into the change that we want to see. And I see a lot of talk shows, because people are make money off of talking. Everybody know. Me used to write in a Gleaner every week, every single week, on economic issues. Then I realize I write it every dig time I write, so I no need to write again. I start focus my brain on something else, because guess what? I create a foundation that showed The first thing I did when I was writing for Gleaner was to get my students to write. When I tell them, say, all right, guess I'm going to run an essay competition with the, you know, and the winner will publish on in a Gleaner and my column, you know. Them get excited. Proper essay. Then the throne speech for the budget, I link them and I say, all right, I'll make this, the throne speech review go from a student point of view. When I go write about the throne speech, I'll pick the best four and make Gleaner publish it. So, the point I'm making is this. My younger brother have a PhD. I'm so proud of him. Just get a PhD in a blockchain. Him never have to do it. Him never have to follow in my footstep. Proud of him. I wish all Jamaicans can be like my younger brother. Let me tell you, my last brother, I taught him last semester in economics at UA. So, it is not about me. I can go at any time. It's about what I've inculcated into my 500 odd students every year. So they themselves know, wherever they are in the world, understand what it is to be a fundamental academic and what it is to approach decision making and problem solving like a leader. Because that is what we want. That is where we ought to go with our mindset. It's not just about a talk show, not just about talking. It's about analyzing and implementing. And that is what Jamaica lacks. A man will come to you and say, youth, make sure you say when you go in, but I be no idiot, you know. Take where you forget. Now, what kind of statement that somebody is making to me? And said them a Jamaican. And them listen to me every day. Hear what me they say every day. But according to them, when you turn politician, you change. So that's the challenge.
Jamaica.
Yeah, thank you. I have two questions. So we're gonna go back and then we want to go about the future of Jamaica. But I think these questions are imperative that I ask them. The period after coming out of what was that? Tivoli incursion, right? And we had a period where Mama P and also Dr. Peter Phillips, that period of degrowth. Can you further explain about that period from, it was 2011 to 2015? And
economically?
Yes, and that contribute to...
We had accumulated a high budget by 2010. Coming out of the global financial crisis in 2008, we accumulated a high budget and our debt was also high. At that time, we needed foreign currency support, but we could not demonstrate a clear path of repayment. You know, when you go to the bank for borrow money, you have to show them exactly how you are going to repay the money. If you cannot show them, they won't give it to you. And that is what happened to Jamaica with Bruce Golding. I mean, they embarked on the JDX at the time, but it wasn't sufficient in order to attract the IMF interest. So when he lost the election, the negotiations were still on the table. Dr. Peter Phillips at the time, along with Portia Simpson Miller, they met with the fund and they devised what were called some fiscal rules, right? These were rules governing how the government should spend. Don't overspend in this area, don't underspend in that area. But fundamentally, it was for us to have a 7.5% primary surplus. The primary surplus is the amount of money from the budget that goes towards payment of interest, right? Because most countries borrow to repay capital. So what we do, as long as you can pay the interest, then it's sustainable over time. Along with the fiscal rules was also another debt exchange, which is the NDX, as well as a couple of tax measures. One of the most prominent at the time was the gas tax, etc., etc. And by doing so, we were able to demonstrate to the fund that we had the ability to create the change that we want to see. And as a result, we were able to get the foreign currency that we needed from the fund to maintain our economy as a going concern. Now, that was 2013. In 2014, we maintained the same trajectory. And in 2015, we also maintained the same trajectory. So Peter Phillips was very instrumental in assisting Jamaica to put itself on the right footing for us to be able to be in the position of which we speak today. So, for example, Nigel Clark, he did nothing exceptional, right? Not to bash the man, but all he did was to follow through with what Peter Phillips started and to not go out of line. And being the Christian he is, being the disciplined person he is, a man who probably never get a detention. He would never step out of line. So it was right up here with his character, right? So that is where. But what he could not have done was where the ingenuity lies, which is how do you ignite growth in a third world developing economy? And that is the spark that Jamaica needed that was unfulfilled.
Okay, thank you for that. You think that the epochs actually assist him and guide him along by not overspending?
Yeah, remember, the epoch was fundamental part of the plan as well. I forgot about them. So along with the fiscal rules, along with the debt exchange and the new tax measures, epoch was also instituted to assist with the oversight so that government, because what had happened over the last couple of decades, was that because government, they were mainly lawyers, right? Because that's politics. Politics is a play of words, and no one plays a string of word more acutely than a lawyer. And as a result, most politicians who tend to be lawyers, right? And not many have been true economists, right? Not many have been true economists. And even many who studied at university, have their PhD, don't have it in hardcore macroeconomics where they apply themselves in a meaningful way. And that has been our deficiency over the years. And I think that that is what we should aim to correct now.
Right, thank you for that. I don't know if Mr. Rattigan have more questions for you, but whenever Mr. Rattigan is ready, I'm ready to go to the future.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, thank you ever so much. Advanced technology like precise farming, hydroponics, aquaponics, AI, and revolutionary agricultural worldwide practices. With you at a policy level, how can you promote adoption to these technologies, particularly for small and medium scale farmers, to transform the society in terms of science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, we have a plan. We have a plan. As I told you before, as a macroeconomist, what we've done is to dichotomize the economy into its various industries, to look at how they use labor, and to look at what technological inputs are going to need it for those industries to grow. The agricultural industry is one such industry, and it is one of the industries where I am most disappointed with how it has been dealt with by the government. And why do I say this? If you read chapter 1 of my book, it gives a historical account of how the economy has progressed over the last 3, 4, 5 decades. And every year, agriculture is disadvantaged by two main things: floods and droughts. And it appears as if we haven't been learning, because a lot of it, and let me discuss agriculture. Jamaica made most of its riches from agriculture, right? Back in the day when sugar was king. At the time, farm plantations, let me call them plantations. Plantations, right? Plantations used to practice what we call monocropping. The name mono mean one. So a big plantation, 500 acres, 1,000 acres, 2,000 acres, planting one single good sugarcane. Your neighbor also planted one single good sugarcane. Your neighbor's neighbor also planted one single good sugarcane. Now, at that time, we benefited from what we call economies of scale, right? the benefits of large-scale production. You trade knowledge, you trade inputs, you trade ideas, you trade secrets between each other. And fundamentally, you understood the agricultural process. So you know you have to dig wells, you have to build dams, you have to have proper irrigation system for your sugarcane. You know hurricanes are coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many times I said to myself, why don't call this thing hurricane?
Mm-hmm.
Hurricane. Cause it come and it blow down the cane them hurry up. Then I stay there and how long and get fit if them fit or so. Or them learn from it and know say, all right, we have to go plant the cane them before a certain time because hurricane, we have to hurry up with the cane them. So, because English people not that smart, you know. Anything you hear them say, so you go, you know. Them not really put nothing or take off nothing where the formulation of words is concerned, you know. Anyway it go, I say it go. Hurricane, same way it go. When you talk to them. So, no, in agriculture, you have, instead of one large farm producing one goods, you have many small farms producing many goods. Saw Elder last night, say my farm. I said, where farm? Everything, man. Everything. A while ago, I 2 van load of jelly me just carried on go market. Everything me I tell my friend. That's what he's saying to me. So what size farm you have? He say, no, I want 2 acre. So you begin to recognize that we have graduated from an agricultural system of many large farms producing a single crop to even more small farms producing many crops. So how do you deal with a situation like this? The knowledge transfer, the economies of scale, all of that now has disappeared, and technology has to fill that gap. The Essex Valley project has been on the budget every year since 2015. 2 billion, X amount of billion being spent on water. Up to now, the Essex Valley situation cannot be solved. Where is the money going? So we have a big leakage where there something come out and say the $3 trillion unaccounted for over the last 10 years. 3 trillion. We could get each Jamaican $1 million. Each the baby on the breast. The elderly could have get $1 million out of that fresh cash. But they're missing. Gone to 83 people. But what is the solution? Us talking and discussing it, or us going and changing it?
Understanding.
I have two questions here. There's one coming in on there's one question coming in on by the chat. And I know where this question is going. It says, can you please ask Andre, what is the implications for and this is one of the last things, maybe the last thing, policy-wise, that Dr. Clark did before exiting the stage, was that he took 10 years of future money from the Mexicans who operate the Namanan International Airport. I think it was, I forgot, 40 or 400. It's a huge sum of money. And so for the next 10 years, Jamaica will not collect a cent from those people operating the airport. And he took this money and nobody knows where this money is going. Or is not. So Khadija is asking, what is the implication of that?
It's very sad, Khadija. And these are things that happen when government make decisions or government practitioners make decisions when they're exiting government. It goes to show you the type of care that they have for the rest of us, the type of care that they have for the less fortunate and for the others of us. You know, it's very sad, and we have to figure out how to change this, because it's not just him. It's most of them. And a person like me sometimes is seen as an outsider. I'm seen as a young boy from the garrison who is coming and disrupting what they have set in stone. And sometimes they don't really agree with this. And we have to now begin to think about the country. And as I said, to change the approach of our leaders. And it hurts me dear to my heart when the budget is being mismanaged and when our citizens are not getting the value for their taxes. But as I said to you, you have two choices. One is to forget about it and live your life, which 2.8 million of us are doing now. Or two, to say within myself that if it is to be a case where Jamaica is redirected, I will play a role in that redirection. Just as though others before me have sacrificed themselves so that I could go to Cornwall College, I can get an education, and my daughters now can live comfortably. I too must sacrifice myself so that our children and children's children can have a better understanding of where they are and can be able to benefit and appreciate the leadership that they are afforded in this country.
All right. Doc, listen. Somebody just called me and asked me, to ask you if you know why that decision was made.
No, I do not.
And that's what I said to the person, that I don't think you'd be able to answer that question. So they were asking, why was the decision made? What was the money taken for? So I said,
I don't know. I have no idea, my friend.
All right, here's a question second question. It's that recently we saw where the Minister of Education, who's also a spokesperson for the cabinet, came out and said that the economy is doing well. And I juxtapose that statement to the poverty level, the exchange rate, inflation, anemic wages, the contracting GDP, to the ordinary man in the street. And I have issues with the way they're calculating the unemployment rate, because they just started using this system in January. A year ago, they started using this system. That's another discussion. But given all of this, can you please reach out to the ordinary man in the street who's hearing this, that the economy is doing well and that there's nothing to worry about, because super ships, that's the way she described it, super ships are in the harbor, and tourists, it's a different type of tourism, and people are spending money, and they never talk about cartel thing because it never happened yet, but I guess they might use that next. But how do you explain this to somebody who doesn't understand the nuances? They don't understand the concepts, but they understand reality. How do you explain to them that?
So the good thing about economics is, and I was explaining this to a young man last night who said that he didn't want to do medicine anymore. He think he should be doing engineering or economics. Whilst I encourage him to follow through with his dreams if it was medicine, we were discussing economics for a long length of time, and the reality is that economics is something that we live it every day. So even though the interactions and the entire discipline is theorized in a book and it is taught in a formal setting, by the mere fact of you consuming and spending and earning, you are living the real economy. And do you know what happened last year in the Jamaican economy? Macroeconomic wise, the economy is in a recession. Hurricane Beryl, according to Statin, pushed the economy in a recession. So for 2024, Jamaica is going to record negative growth. So the person knows because they are living it. They are seeing it. When you go downtown, which I do, and speak to the higglers down there, it doesn't matter what they're selling. Commerce is in danger, especially commerce of garments, because Temu, Shein, Alibaba, all these things are reducing the transportation cost factor, reducing the goods production cost factor, and more people, because the government increased the threshold from $50 to $100 and from 500 to 1,000 at the airport. More people are importing things that they can themselves. So what are we saying? We're saying that we look better on paper as it relates to debt repayment and borrowing. But as it relates to the economic growth, increasing the GDP from 15 to 30 billion, from 15 to 45 billion, from 45 to 90 billion, that is a challenge that we face. Big challenge that we face.
You use the R word, recession. I've looked at PIOJ's report, and I've looked at Statin's reports. Nowhere do I see the R word.
What do you see?
I see them saying contraction. I see them saying it's everything is contracted. You know, are minus 2% or 2, whatever it is, but they don't use the R word. Now, as an economist, is that a wise course of action or an unwise course of action? Because you know it have repercussions. It have repercussions.
Go on Google, man. You have Google on your computer?
Have
Google what is a recession, man.
No, but I'm saying, why is it that as an economist, do you
recession is a recession, man?
Mm-hmm.
Economy go two-way up and down. Go sideways, sometimes flat, but you go two-way up and down. And if last year we produce more than we produce this year, it means that we're in a recession. Yeah. Jamaicans, especially those government ministries, departments, and agencies, are being paid by the government to spread good news, all in it bad.
Okay.
I am not paid by the government to spread no news. I analyze economies and say it as it is. I'm not being paid to pretty up anything or to use statistics to disguise anything or to use statistics to blindfold anything or to try to make something look worse than it is. I've never attempted to make the Jamaican economy look worse than it is. I call a spade a spade. When I went to university, our number one motto was call a bee's wing and not a wasp wing. If you do so, you'll graduate with first class honors. When you take a bee's wing and a wasp wing, you put them beside each other. If you look upon them with the naked eye, same thing. You have to go deep with a microscope so you can know the anatomy of a grass straw, because it is very important to understand the anatomy of the simplest things if we need to know the anatomy of the vastest universe. Fundamental. So when you see these ministries, departments, and agencies masking the numbers, the economic contract by 2.8%. Then 3 months later, we made a mistake. Economic contract by 3.5%. Come on.
But using the word contract versus saying that we are looking at a recession, it's just
said to you before, go up on Google. Tell me what is a recession. Do it now, man, before I come off. Come, I have to go left to I have a meeting at 6 and I may have to travel 20 minutes to get to the meeting.
We don't want to hold you. Well,
do it before I come off, man. Go up on your thing. Thing. Why?
1 second. You know what it means, but I guess you want me to look it up.
Yeah, more your telephone.
Yeah. All right. A recession. It's a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in production, employment, real income, and other indicators.
What's a few months?
It doesn't define a few months.
Okay.
But we do things in Jamaica in quarters.
All right. So you can call 1 quarter a few months. So it's a period of sustained decline growth of more than 2 quarters.
Yes, guys, it says 6 months or no longer.
All right. So more than 2 quarters. So I'm going to start get the drift now. So what want to say to me?
No, I know we no. Right. No, we were talking. I know we were talking to Kevin and the Jamaics. I want to be clear. I want to.
We just want to make sure that.
No. I know we were talking. It's not we. It's not we. It's not we. The talk talk. We just want to make that abundantly clear. We must. You hear him say?
But I have one question before you go.
Because remember what I'm saying. I'm saying you can pretty it up.
Yes.
And a recession is a recession. It's that simple. It's up and down. Sometimes it go flat.
I'm Mr. Masha and the nephew, you know.
Yeah. And his nephew. I want to introduce him.
I hope you watch that interview.
Listen,
He's a South African.
Yeah, well, listen, the doctor not for leave. So here what I'm going to do. We could just do a quick round. No. We'll do a quick round. Jamaics, go ahead.
All right. The practice which the government has been doing. I hear Ralston Iman talking about it. Financing the dollar, $90 billion being dumped into the US dollar. What is the negative impact that can have on the Jamaican society?
I mean, no, we have reserves at the highest level than we've ever had it before in our economic history. So I think the government has some amount of leverage to play with. The Bank of Jamaica, they have leverage to play with. So they can intervene. The exchange rate is one of our better performing metrics over the last 3 years. It has been fluctuating between a 50 and 160 consistently, meandering about around 155. Prior to that, it was on a faster depreciating trajectory. And as a result, the implications of the decline has been impacting our purchasing power severely. Now it's sort of, not so devastating. I think the point that Ralston is trying to make is that in order for us to have a better valued currency, the Bank of Jamaica can intervene so much and no more. We have to produce our way into prosperity. So we need more demand for Jamaican dollars. We need more demand for Jamaican goods. We need more demand for Jamaican services to counter our demand for foreign goods, for foreign services, etc. Let me give you an example. When I go to class and I say to my students, I teach macroeconomics at UWI, the undergrad course. And that course has about 500 students, right? 2 streams, one at 300 and add the next stream call it 200. And I say to my students, look on your person and tell me, what are you wearing made in Jamaica? And him say, sir, what you are wearing made in Jamaica? I say, nothing. From my shirt, my pants, my underpants, my socks, my shoes, America I make. So me have to buy with US dollar. Look around the whole class of 350 pitney. One little girl have on a Bridget slippers. And one youth have a brush bag. So if I were to do it in terms of percentage, 100, 1%. One at 200, 0.5%. One of 300, 0.033%. So 0.03%. Okay, no one 330, 350. 0.03% of the class wear something Jamaican. So that means we're 99.7% down in the deficit. I say, all right, forget about your person. Let's go home. What do you have at home made in Jamaica? I say, look in your kitchen, your fridge, your stove, your microwave, your kettle, Yo. What else? Me have air fryer.
Air fryer.
Nothing.
The faucet we turn on the pipe, the tile, the paint on the wall. How much see paint on the wall alone make a Jamaica? The paint on the wall alone.
And probably copper.
In your bedroom. Some of them bed make a Jamaica, no problem. Them bed them, you know what not, mattress, whatever. But the point I am trying to make is we are in this deficit from a consumption point of view. The only way to escape this deficit is a production point of view. And that is the fundamental thing that every Jamaican wake up every day and miss. We feel so we go to have this EPA US, if we buy this EPA Benz and Bima, and buy this EPA Gucci and everything, and we now make nothing to sell back the people them. So that's a fundamental lesson in economics that I will leave you with today.
Kevin, anything?
Boy, I just want, let me not go back into anything when you have to go. So I want to thank you for.
Yeah, man, Ratigan, you can visit back a thing, you know, later down your line, you know.
I mean, you can't visit back. You have the key. What do you mean visit back?
Yeah, man, you can visit back a thing, man. Or you can read it again or something.
You have a spot. I don't know if Ratty did tell you, but you have a spot.
Yeah.
Listen, when I give me one little window, yeah.
You see how the big window? The big window you have now. Big window.
I know that.
We never put your name there, no. You put it there. You have your spot.
Yeah, man. It's fundamental though, because these issues have to be resolved and unraveled if we are supposed to escape this macroeconomic deadlock, as I've coined it in my literature. So let's begin to be mindful of who we are and use our common sense to prevail.
Well, clearly we need to get back to simple things.
Yeah.
In order to make complex differences.
Exactly. Hey, that chat is tough.
Yeah.
Jojo.
And so with people like you, putting things, breaking it down into simple understanding for the common me, now we can move forward. We can turn to our kids, our children, and say, hey, listen, don't make the same mistake that we made. Yeah, we talk it all the time, but no, they're living it. So now we can move out of this. We are in a place and a time where everything is at our disposal. It in our pocket.
True.
Because we don't have these devices. So, like you say, technology, Jamaica is in 1995. We need to do something within 2025 to move at least 3 years in this one.
And we need it. We definitely. Sir Ratigan, where we can listen to a show meanwhile I drive?
You can go to Reggae Global Radio.
You can WhatsApp me link. So we can stick a link and listen to your show if I anything.
Kevin, throw it. Kevin, I'll put it in the chat. You'll see it in the chat.
Oh, but that go come to
No, you'll get it right. You'll get it right. Kevin, my sent you right.
Come to my computer, man. Send it to my WhatsApp now. 876-416-9658.
I'll send it to you.
Right, please.
Before you go, let me just say that, a few days ago, I was elated when I spoke to Dr. Haughton. And for this reason, he was actually having a conversation with some people. He was at an event, I guess, at somewhere. And he said to me, Ratigan, say, me that talked to some elders about you not too long ago. And it struck a chord with me. I felt a certain sense of accomplishment that the word is getting out to people on the street now that, tune into Ratigan, him have a message in bringing on a lot of people, and him willing to listen and him willing to learn. Now that joy has been surpassed by your presence here today, because I'm telling you, the intellectual stimulation that not only I have received, but the audience, the panelists, You say that them not measure technology in Jamaica. Well, what just happened? We can't measure it. It's immeasurable. And I just want to thank you for coming on and presenting and educating and just basically laying out so that everybody, anybody can understand the message.
Respect,
And look forward to having you again. And like I said, you know, we're at your disposal. I'll touch base with you because I know you're busy and school has start back and you have the 500 plus students and so. But the invitation is there. You don't even need no invitation. You just call and say, "Brethren, I have some time."